Welcome back to Dama Museums 2022. Here's your event chair, David Lipsey.
Tom, thanks so much. I barely need to do an introduction, but I always want to do a welcome. Jane Alexander and Douglas Hegley are two leading professionals in our field who I've learned so much from over the years in what's been important, what continues to be important, and how do we reach those goals in the various sizes of institutions that we all work with. Thanks so much for the two of you to be here again, and I'll turn it over to you and I'll be back to help wrap things up.
Thank you, David. As always, great to see you. And hello, everyone. I know it's the end of a kind of a long day, hopefully an impressively instructive day for all of you. I'm Douglas Hegley. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I've been working at the intersection of museums and technology for more than 2 decades. And I'm honored to be here with Jane, and I'll ask her to introduce herself in a second. I wanted to just kind of set the tone for the intent of this session. We really mean this to be informal and interactive because, you know, the plan as it is to have a little bit of a fireside chat between Jane and I, and also to get questions from you. So if you would use the Q&A function in the event platform so that we can take an eye, I'll try to eyeball those questions and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So Jane, please introduce yourself. Might be muted.
Hi, I'm Jane Alexander. I'm the Chief Digital Information Officer at the Cleveland Museum of Art, which I've been there over a decade. I always like being part of this conference because if anyone has ever listened to anything I have to say, all the innovation and all the ways we creatively use digital and technology to make art matter to our audiences starts with the back end, and the digitization of your collections and your DAM integrating with multiple platforms is the beginning of letting you do anything you want to do. So that's why I always come back to this conference. I think it's great. I love seeing all the people. I was hoping this year was going to be in person, but that's a hope for next year. So, so Douglas, take it away.
Thanks, Jane. So let's start with something kind of general that's certainly on everybody's mind, I think, this moment in history. Let's talk about how our respective organizations' digital offerings have enabled our museums to respond to the challenges of this terrible pandemic that we're still in. But over the past years, what was your experience pivoting to sort of primarily digital interactions with your audiences?
Well, it's really interesting because we've been for over a decade really using innovation to do really trying a lot of different things to make getting new audiences and making art more relatable. And we were in the middle of an exhibition project that was supposed to open November 2020 and ended up we moved it to November 2021, and it just closed on Sunday. But we went home in March, like all of us did, and our team was bummed. We were working, you know, nonstop on this project, and Friday night, I was kind of like, you know, we all thought, oh well, we're going to be home for the next 2 months, you know, which seemed like a long time at that point, and by Monday morning, while we were all getting our entire museum online and getting everyone through new workflows, I told my team, this is actually an opportunity for Cleveland. We've done the work with putting together integrated API, data-driven platforms. And the thing that's always hard for Cleveland is we're Cleveland. We're not in New York. We're not in California. We're in Cleveland. And Douglas can attest to this, but when people walk through our doors, they're always like, wow, we had no idea. And so this was an opportunity to be able to think differently and create online platforms and tool sets fairly quickly because we had done a decade of work of putting our back end in place. So we kind of thrived. I mean, we double time, but we thrived during the pandemic as far as the number of people that we drew to our site, the number of tool sets we created, the number of new programs we created, the number of AI tool sets, the number of hits to our collection. And the other big part, important part was that we also had 2 years before also had an open access policy in place. So having an open access, digitization, a DAM, integrated, API driven, we were ready to it was kind of fun. We got to kind of really think outside the box. And that's why I do always think it's really important thinking about how you digitize your collection and how you manage it.
Yeah, I think similar experiences for me. The first wave was just making it work, right? People scattered back home, had a variety of technologies, and there was a core technologies need to get people connected. But right on the heels of that was the kind of frankly intense emotional concern from senior leadership and trustees. Oh my God, we're going to lose our audiences, right? The museum is in lockdown. We've never had to do this before for more than a day or two, right? For some electrical emergency or something. So there was this kind of like desperate move to flood the internet with our digital stuff. And I think I don't know about Cleveland, what we saw, and I was actually at the Minneapolis Institute of Art at the time and then moved to the Met during the pandemic, which is a whole different story. But the idea of sort of putting out a lot of digital content it was more reactive than strategic. So we saw a lot of initial engagement and then rapid drop off. And the same thing was happening at the Met. So I think the third sort of phase was to step back and say, wait a minute, what's the right amount? It's not just about flooding every channel with as much content as possible. That's a more reactive stance. How do we actually make use of the tools we built and create a rhythm that's actually engaging for the folks out there? And when we did that and we thought about the strengths that we had, I think at the Met, we saw a ton of traffic to our Met Kids platform, even to content that was 8 to 10 years old, because it had been carefully crafted, right? It had a kind of evergreen quality to it, and that was super helpful. So I'm in agreement with you. And of course, already people are asking questions, which is wonderful. What I see here, Jane, you answer this first. What are 2 or 3 trends you see regarding digital asset management and museums in the coming year?
Well, types of files, like, we're really adding a lot of photogrammetry to our collection. We're working with conservation on file types, X-rays and file types, honestly, I never knew existed. And by really thinking about how you're managing all these, that will affect what you can create and build for certain audiences, from scholars to general visitors. The other thing is AI. Everywhere we use it. We have a search in all of our collection management systems, and which is integrated with our digital asset management system. And it's been hugely helpful in creating, we've created a bunch of AI tool sets, but it is sort of the way to be able to find things, and especially dive deeper and have people who are using your collections be able to find things in different ways. So I would think those are sort of too big. What do you think, Douglas?
I think better clarification between the difference between digital asset management and time-based media preservation, right? And really understanding that that's generally 2 different practices and often 2 different systems. And then maybe building integrations between them, that's a question mark in my mind. And I'm also thinking about staffing, right? It may be a little different in Cleveland, and I think you and I have slightly different situations, but in New York, right, being located in the center, more or less, of New York City with nonprofit pay rates makes talent acquisition and retention somewhat difficult. And I think, particularly with systems like digital asset management, the opportunity for the first time to have museums think about remote workers, permanent remote workers, I think is on the horizon. It's something that I think we'll see a trend in 2022. So the next question is asking about dams and content management system integration. You've done quite a bit of that in Cleveland. So the question is like, are they too different to merge into a single platform? What do you think about this idea of single platform? Is that the way that you went, and why or why not?
We have a separate collection management system and a separate digital asset management system and a separate donor system that we also have now integrated so that our philanthropy crew can know when a donor's object is on view or whatnot, or new assets are created for it. There's a sense of, if you can get it all in one and it meets your needs, why not, right? But what my experience is it's easy. It's pretty easy to integrate. If if you can create an API from any database system and integrating them to pull out what you don't even know what you're going to want to pull out until you're creating something new. So I'm a believer of get the best system to do the job you need it to do, and then integrate them. And we have created middlewares that so that, just for example, we like one source of truth. So no matter what, we have multiple interactives in the museum. We have online collection, we have open access, and when a curator changes a date, it's updated every 15 minutes live to anywhere that object is. So so in that sense, like, the system that's keeping the dates is now matching with the image. And so to me, it's extremely important that they're integrated in some way. If you're a smaller museum, maybe all-in-one is the best way to go, and simpler. But being that the data talks to each other is what's important.
Yeah, I think sort of the similar situation. The size of our repositories, the complexity of the data makes it a little bit difficult to envision a single system. But so I assume you're talking about some API connectivity in the back and between databases, right? So the databases can actually talk to one another. The mistake, it was what we thought we could do 10, 15 years ago, was start replicating data, right? So we copy collections information into the dams so that the dams could be searched using collection information. And then, oh no, we have to synchronize these two data sets. What a nightmare, right? So by building it out with APIs in the back end, you can keep that single source of truth and call it when you need it, and have those automatic updates. And I think when we talk about open access, we're also thinking proactively about the future in that way, right? Because we've all had experience of contributing some of our content onto third-party platforms, but they often want the data to be massaged in their format, and then you give it to them and they publish it, and oh no, next year we find out we had one of those works misattributed, or something's been, it's no longer.
Yeah, it's so funny that you said that, because we've created it also so that, if you have a public API, and we keep each year working even on ours, then any repository can pull the data they want in the way, if you have it parsed correctly. So we're always looking at, of course, we always want standards so that we kind of know where we're coming from, but you can pretty much get there. But my problem is when someone says, we would love for Cleveland Museum's collection to be part, and they don't have they just want to download it, and it won't be dynamic. And to me, it's open access, they can do whatever they want, but I get uncomfortable because it's going to be outdated. The amount of changes all our curators do is research constantly. There could be a new information on provenance, a date, a different title, a different creator. And also sometimes it's not even in open access anymore because the date was wrong, And so, so you can't, if you don't have that dynamic tool sets, you will have information that's not correct. And it's interesting how many sort of known entities create like tool sets using the Met and the Rijks and Cleveland's API but it's not dynamic. And so I'm already like, yeah, but it's not going to be updated. You have to keep it updated, you know.
It's interesting, you know, we're just on the early stages of an effort to do some DEIA informed research into the collection. And it's already resulting in some radically different cataloging for artist identities and community identification and representation, those kinds of things. So we're at a crucial stage where our detailed data is going to be changing. It's going to be changing rapidly, and it's going to be changing sort of to keep pace with a current day way of thinking about human beings and cultures and identities. So that making sure that it's dynamic, not just on our platforms, right, on our website, on our social media, but that hoping that people use open access in a way that's also dynamic so that they keep up with it. It's a good point. So there's some questions about artificial intelligence and some very specific questions about functionalities of DAM. But Jane, can you talk a little bit, what are you doing with AI? How did you get it? They're in the Q&A and the Ubilo platform, but so everyone will be a surprise to you. That's great. I can constantly catch you off guard, but give us a little bit more about AI. What do you mean? What are you doing with AI? How did you do it?
Well, I mean, as we do, we like to experiment with things and then think about, you know, we try sort of small tool sets and then we think bigger how we can apply it. And initially, when we built out our, when we were going open access, our website hadn't been updated in 10 years, and that's the project I'm working on this year. But we had to redo our collection online to really benefit this open access initiative. And that's when initially we really got into one of the biggest problems we found in collections is how to search by multiple ways and how to make it smarter as it goes on. And we had done some AI tool sets in our ArtLens gallery, but because we had that in place, one of the first games we launched, talking again about the pandemic, one thing I wanted to say about that is I did notice in the first 2 weeks, like we didn't launch anything brand new, but I saw everybody put up on these virtual tours that have been out for a decade and videos that were decades old. And to me, it was about creating relevant information. What's going on in the world? So one of the things we brainstormed and we thought about audiences, and one was audiences like all the workers were now at home. We all work at a museum, not for the salary. We work at museums because we like to be around the artifacts and the art and and the sort of water cooler moments when you kind of discover things. So we used Milvis is a sort to library to look at the entire collection, and we created a game. We created in Slack. We actually, as a museum, use Teams, and this is still available. People play it every day, but every morning there's a prompt that has something to do with what's going on in the world. And 2 years ago, it was about coming to the desk with any pants on, or as schools were still going to be closed. It could be something fun. It could be something serious. But there'd be a prompt, and then you had 3 categories to answer. So like, what are you wearing to work today? It could be just a top, naked, or fully dressed. So you would pick a prompt, and because of our search, it would then pull the category that we've selected, and you would be able to pick images based on the prompt you picked, and then you would write a little funny caption. And at 5 o'clock, you get a notification, and your whole team gets to see what everybody picked. And it really became fun to see people's humor. And actually, we all became because it finds things that you don't normally look at when you have, with the Met, it would be really crazy because we have like 65,000 objects, but we were seeing prints and things we never saw before. The other thing that we used AI, I totally recommend, if you're interested, to look at our ArtLens AI. Back in September of 2020, there was hope people would be going back to college, teachers would be going back to the classroom, and all of a sudden we're all staying home again. So we created a new tool set that said share your view, because you weren't in the classroom, you weren't there. And so you take a picture of a view out your window, and you load it up, and it matches it with something in our collection. And the reason it's kind of fun, it's quick, but everything we do also brings you right to the collection page. Then you could always dive deeper. So teachers could use it as a break for, to get the class started, or a writing assignment, or even a research assignment. So those are just fun ways that we used it. We saw how it worked. What do we have to do with our back end to keep it up? And now we're thinking bigger for our collection. Like, how can we use it amongst the whole collection so people can dive in new and different ways? And that's those are sort of
yeah. And I think that's great. And what we've seen is that by using some AI, and then not complicated things, but connections that we don't know about can be found. Everyone knows the sort of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right, kind of thing. But if you apply that to your collection, it's very interesting. We didn't know, but found out by putting our data out there in public and letting, Wikimedia suss through it and all of its other 40 million data sets. But our famous painting by John Singer Sargent, Madam X, which depicts an elegant woman in a black evening gown, the gown itself inspired the gown that Rita Hayworth wore in the film Gilda. We didn't know that, right? We've had the painting, but making those connections out to sort of popular culture and other things, it's delightful. It leads to a kind of different way of engaging different audiences. It's perfect for social media, but it's the kind of thing you would never find with an army of interns. They wouldn't find that information. You need to use big data sets and AI to find it. So our friend Norbert Cantor has asked the provocative question. So let's explore this one a little bit in the next few minutes. Will museum management use AI, machine learning, and other such cognitive services as an excuse to invest less in costly human resources, or into collection research, data quality management, and asset management? So are we all being replaced by robots? What do you think?
Me, what do I think? I think that's a real fun question. I think I like to always say, like in the 80s, when we got our little Mac with Corel Draw, and all of us were now graphic artists, because we could write our own posters and we could do our own thing. But in sense, they were awful and ugly and everywhere, and printed out all over the place, and too many imitations done by home. So I use that example to say that technology is just a tool. We always take it as an advantage too, and that's why our team also always, like, sort of what people are in charge of changes as we change what we're doing. So I don't think we'll get rid of people. I mean, this is recorded, so I won't say, I don't mind if some of the HR people leave. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke. But no, I don't think it's going to replace. I don't think we're going to be replaced by. I think certain functions will make us be able to take our jobs to new places. I mean, and add more scholarship and more creativity and more relevance to the world, because there's still a feeling of what are art museums for, and really, people have a limited focus on how valuable they really can be.
Yeah, I agree. And I have that positive outlook to say that these technologies are augmentative, not replacement technologies, right? Research still, at this point in time, until we reach the singularity, research does require the capacity to synthesize knowledge and to reason through and to fill in gaps, those kinds of things. But boy, you can fill in those gaps faster if you can run a quick search through enormous data lakes and data oceans to bring back result sets that inform the research that you're doing. So no, Norbert, I don't think we'll be replaced by robots anytime soon. A couple of questions, Jane, about the relationship, and particularly the future of the relationship between digital asset management systems and open data and linked open data. So where do you see that going?
Well, I think I think you need the data start someplace, and how you catalog it, how you parse it, how it's created in your database will just be able to be used in multiple ways. I mean, as it is, I mean, we have this very, Jeannie something, but we have a very flow chart of when does an object become open access. Now, some museums do it very simply. We have lawyers who went down to all these complex things, if this, then that, then and everything. And so we need to have the data be able to support the protocols so that we're not gypping the world out of more open access objects. So I don't know if I'm answering this question right, but I think they're all linked. I think it starts with the data and how it's managed to figure out what you're doing. I mean, it's all one, our person handles all of it, you know, I mean, as far as the analyst and the manager of our digital asset management, but then she's integrated into when we're creating something new, we're constantly, like even looking at protocols for open access, it's like, well, we don't have publication dates on everything. What can we else, you know, we start to look at definitions, you know, when you accession an object, is that considered public? Is that, you know, so again, we start with making sure our data can support what we want to do. And then we add new fields and things that we require people to add information to. So just as you noted with your DEI searches, we, during the pandemic also, that is what we did in the first week, is we had been working on a project that you could search by, you know, LGBTQ artists, African-American artists, Asian artists. And then as we did that, we got a lot of people emailing, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? And some of those projects are a lot. I mean, if you're talking just American, it's a lot easier to get through our data. It's a shorter period of time than thousands of years. So again, we're constantly looking at the main source. We believe in one source of truth. And then what else we want to do with that needs to pull from that. Does that make sense, Douglas?
It does to me, yeah, to a degree. And I'm cognizant of the clock. And there's one thing here that I think we could answer sort of quickly, a trend in some of the questions. And the trend is something like, I work at a small museum. There are a lot of digital assets. There are limited resources. How the hell are we going to implement a dam? You know, and then one of the questions of in-house staff, third-party staff. I think, you know, every situation is unique, of course, so I can't make a blanket statement, but I think implementation and then use and maintenance can be slightly different things. If you don't hire staff who tend to the care and feeding of your digital asset management system, you'd be in trouble. But implementation is a different kind of challenge. Now, organizing that well can be tough. I think it's often really advantageous to think about third parties who come in who have a lot of experience doing that, particularly if they do it with museums, and to really lean into cloud resources rather than trying to manage all that on site. What's your thoughts, Jane?
I agree with everything you just said. I mean, there's a different skill set. I go back to the person managing just our the person managing our digital asset management system and our collection, it does two systems. There's sort of like the collection systems. And it's important because then there's an overview of what one system needs, where are we going to keep the data, and where are we going to make sure it shows up for the other person. But when you have an implementation, I know it's always about budgets, but I will say what we do at CMA and why we've been successful, we don't really have a large team. We do a lot, but we bring in experts for the implementation stage or the concepting how to do something we haven't done before. We build it, we have to maintain it, we have to iterate on it. But I mean, museums need to trust that for these implementation projects, those are capital budgets that you need. It does require putting money behind it. And I do think one of the advantages of the pandemic is more museums recognize, oh yeah, we should have had someone in that position, or we should have had our collections digitized, or and. So I'm not a big fan of the pandemic, although it sounds like today, but I'm just saying there was some there were some golden opportunities to bring museums and digital museums really more that the necessity is for everybody, from the scholars to the visitors, to the members, to the students, to people all over the world who are just looking for the best ways to get through what they need to get through.
And I think most people have agreed that the pandemic, for all of its terror, death, and all the horrid things there, it has also been a kind of accelerant and has contributed to enabling a different vision for digital and cultural heritage. In our case, you and I, for museums, but sort of for all cultural heritage, that this was kind of, for many decades, we've been seen as extra and sort of annoying that we have to spend money on this digital stuff. But now I think there's this opportunity to sort of conceptualize the work differently. It's seen as more central and more vital. I think we're really understanding a lot more about digital interfaces in terms of reach, in terms of sort of brand identity, in terms of not just reach, but also engagement. And then for us in our sector, what we really want is impact, right? Reach is great. We want to reach as many people as possible. We hope they engage. We hope they find our content meaningful and interesting. But in the end, the real hope is that we're actually changing people's lives, right? We're making them more empathic. We're making them see the world through different lens, or think of themselves as more interconnected with history and with what human beings can do that's magnificent and awesome, right? Not just the bad news that we see on social media platforms. So I think that's, you talked about how we find meaning in the work, and it's not really for a paycheck. All true. Everyone deserves to get paid, but ultimately that's what motivates, right? And inspires all of us.
Yeah,
I keep waiting for David to interrupt us and cut us off.
There he is.
There he is. Yeah. Well, Douglas and Jane, thank you so much for helping to provide synthesis and hope at the same time. Jane, I did go on eBay and I found that version of Corel Draw that you were asking for. So watch for it in the mail.
Oh, good. I can start making my own signs again.
Exactly. And then Douglas will send you some AI software to go along with that.
Okay.
But
Excellent.
and as COVID has, in one of its kind of warped caroms, given us the chance to convene around the world today. This morning, to watch the good morning from countries numbering over 50. Just wow. And to see and hear so much insight about what the capacity for digital expression and the accelerant, to use one of the words that was just used. And I like so much what you said, Jane, that this is for everybody. And the role definition of what we enable through better digital liquidity and digital enablement, we don't know where its horizons are. We had to find a whole bunch of them in the last couple of years. And I think that's given us institutionally an angle of repose that's what we just do with digital. We know those horizons are largely going to unfold with bits and bytes and binaries involved, and will continue to shape the people we hire, the people we contract with around that. So on behalf of Henry Stewart, I'd like to thank both of you for your time and your continued leadership in the field, and look forward to seeing you both in person in New York in September, if not before. Thank you for we will cross our fingers. Thank you both for your time today.
Thank you. It was really fun. Thanks, Douglas.
Great.
Thanks,
Take
David.
care, Jane. Take care, David. Everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah. So this concludes the formal programming for the conference today. We will look forward to welcoming everyone tomorrow. The recessions have been recorded and they're available to you. And as I like to do when we conclude a day together, I do like to say, Dear Asset Manager, DAM. And today I'm going to add a couple of other DAMs to that. We're looking towards digitally accessible museums. We're looking to dynamically accelerating our missions. And all big challenges we know do exercise frustration, as in going here in Journeys, known loosely, my next on-point query really says to uplift a very welcome and excited yes to being bedazzled with damn. And if you take all the first letters from that, it goes from A to Z. And I think one of the fun things about DAM is that, yeah, it goes from A to Z, but like the Dr. Seuss book, it goes to the 27th letters. It goes to the ones we don't know yet. And on an optimistic note that we all will enjoy that journey and do the hard work of getting DAM to work, this concludes our day together today. On behalf of Henry Stewart, thank you very much for your participation, and we'll look forward to welcoming you again tomorrow. Good day, good evening, and maybe for a couple of you, good morning.